Introduction to the endocrine system, which is a system of the glands. And the endocrine glands are really, they're not considered to have, they don't have ducts, okay? They're ductless. And so if you have a duct, that's considered exocrine. But endocrine glands, they don't have a duct. So that when they secrete the hormone, it's just secreted directly into the blood. So often you, instead of saying secreting, you will, or reading or hearing, you'll hear that the hormones have been released because they were not secreted through a duct. They were just like released directly into the blood. So the endocrine glands release hormones. And the hormones are chemical messengers that are released into the blood. They travel throughout the blood to their target tissues. Now, we already learned on the last video, Introduction to the Nervous System, the two glands, endocrine glands, that are located in your brain, okay? Also, this brain part right here, number 21, belongs to both the nervous system and the endocrine system. What was the name of this brain part 21 that belongs to both systems? That is going to be the hypothalamus. And this gland, what was the name of this gland? What? So you have the hypothalamus, which is this right here. And this is going to be the pituitary gland. It is also known as a hypophysis. So I do want you to know that. And it is also known as the master endocrine gland. And it is a sac, and it has a whole lot of hormones. And these hormones go and they target other endocrine glands. So that's why it's called the master endocrine gland. But for this first test, I just want you to know the name of one hormone that comes from the pituitary gland. So really, there's a lot of hormones that come from the pituitary gland, but for this first test, you know, it's just introduction to the endocrine system. Name a hormone for the pituitary gland. I want you to know human growth hormone, HGH, which is responsible for growth and development. All the tissues in the body, it comes from the pituitary gland. What was this gland back here in the back behind the thalamus in the brain? That's going to be the pineal gland. And do you remember the two hormones, also neurotransmitters, that come from the pineal gland? Do you remember them? Serotonin and melatonin. So serotonin is the one that is going to wake you up just like 5 minutes before your alarm clock. Makes you feel good as well. It's a feel-good hormone, like real chipper and happy. And sometimes they tell you like, oh, you know, just go to bed, you'll feel better in the morning. And one time I was really pissed off. I can't remember, or I was upset. I don't remember what it was, but I remember when somebody told me that, I was like, oh, whatever. I was like all pissed. But then when I woke up in the morning, I was like, oh my God, I do feel better. I do feel better. So it was the serotonin that woke me up, made me feel good. Melatonin is the one that makes you sleepy. So these are the pineal gland, these two hormones, also neurotransmitters, are responsible for your circadian rhythm, your sleep-wake cycle. They have a role in that. So I can use this model again. So right here was the pituitary gland with the hormone. It has a whole lot of hormones, but the one I want you to know, HGH, human growth hormone, comes from pituitary gland. This gland back here, it is also on this other half, the pineal gland back here. And the hypothalamus it is considered part of the endocrine system because it communicates with the endocrine system and tells the endocrine system, hey, you need to get to work. We need to get something in line. Somebody's falling out of line. Another model, this is my half head model. I use it for everything. So like all of this right here is the cerebrum, and here we have the cerebellum, we have the brainstem, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. And this brain part, the thalamus, what is this brain part? B. What is this brain part? It's the hypothalamus. And then we have this gland here, name the gland 11, and name the endocrine gland number 10. Okay, then we have another gland that is in our neck right here. This is the thyroid gland. And it has 2 hormones that come from the thyroid. You should know the name of one already because of the video on homeostasis. You had to give me an example maintaining body temperature. What was the hormone that comes from the thyroid that is responsible for metabolism? So thyroxine. So thyroxine increases your metabolic rate and is responsible for growth and development as well, because you have to have metabolism in order to grow and develop. So it increases your metabolic rate, and by increasing your metabolic rate, it's going to produce heat as a byproduct from those metabolic reactions, chemical reactions, and so it increases your body temperature. But if you are hot, then you want to decrease the amount of thyroxine. And another hormone, there are just 2 hormones that come from the thyroid. Only 2 hormones from the thyroid. Thyroxine and thyrocalcitonin. It's also somewhere along the line, they kind of like lost the thyro part, the prefix, and they started just calling it calcitonin. But I prefer thyrocalcitonin because it helps you to remember where it comes from. Calcitonin comes from the thyroid, so it's thyrocalcitonin. So I want you to know it as thyrocalcitonin, but also know that calcitonin is the same thing as thyrocalcitonin. Now let's talk about what does this hormone do. It has something to do with calcium, okay? And what it does is it takes the calcium out of the blood and it puts it into the bone. So if you were to have too much calcium in your blood, hypercalcemia, it would take the calcium out of the blood and put it into your bone. And one of the tricks that helps me remember this is that thyrocalcitonin starts with a T. So it's T for takes it out of the blood. Now behind the thyroid, this is your thyroid that's in your neck. There are 4 little glands here, 1, 2, 3, 4, like 2 on the right and 2 on the left, like behind the thyroid. And those are called your parathyroid glands. Parathyroid. They are like, you cannot differentiate the parathyroid from the thyroid. So here on the model, they have them like a white, but really and truly you cannot tell them the part from the thyroid. The only way you can see them is like you would have to section that thyroid and look at it under a microscope, and then you can say, oh, this is a different tissue. But just looking at the thyroid, you cannot say, oh, here's the parathyroid. It's like you cannot differentiate between the two. But histologically, they are different. So under the microscope, you would be able to see that there is a different little gland sitting on the back of the thyroid. The parathyroid gland just has one hormone, only one hormone, and it is the parathyroid hormone, PTH. And it also regulates the amount of calcium in your blood. But this one is going to be responsible for putting calcium into the blood. So it starts with the letter P, PTH, parathyroid hormone. And it's going to be responsible for, if you had like low calcium, hypocalcemia, it would take the calcium out of the bone and put it in the blood. So P puts calcium in the blood and T takes calcium out of the blood, which is the thyroid calcitonin. So parathyroid hormone. It's the only hormone from the parathyroid gland, and I want you to know the name and I want you to know its action. Puts calcium in the blood. Takes it from the bone, puts it in the blood. Next we have the pancreas. The pancreas is sitting behind the stomach. So here we have the stomach and behind it is the pancreas. Is that next? You can't see it. So behind the stomach here, there's the liver, there's the stomach, and if we took the stomach out, you would see the pancreas. It's like a little sliver of an organ. There we have the pancreas. You know the two hormones that come from the pancreas. Like, I know that you know them because on the previous video, there was this third video, which is called homeostasis. There's a example that you have to teach me about hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia, and that involves the pancreas. What are the two hormones from the pancreas? Insulin and glucagon. And what do those do? What do those two hormones do? So which one is it that takes the sugar out of the blood and which one puts sugar in the blood? So insulin is the only hormone that causes the cellular uptake of glucose. So it takes the glucose, it opens up all those glucose pores, and it takes the glucose out of the blood and puts it into the cells. So it causes a cellular uptake of glucose. So it's going to decrease your blood sugar, while glucagon, it's going to put sugar in the blood. So it's responsible for glycogenolysis. Okay, so glucagon targets the, do you remember? It targets the liver cells and the skeletal muscle cells where you store in those cells glycogen. And it causes the glycogen to break down into glucose, which puts the glucose into the blood, increasing your blood sugar. Now, it's not the only hormone that puts sugar in the blood. Lots of steroids and other hormones put sugar in the blood, but it's the main one that's responding when you kind of falling low on your sugar range. And it's the one that's coming from the pancreas to regulate blood sugar. And those are the only two hormones from the pancreas. Okay, I want you to know them. I want you to know their action. So here's another model of that pancreas, the pancreas. The pancreas, it is an endocrine gland. It has those two hormones, insulin and glucagon. But it is also part of the digestive system. We're going to learn about the digestive system a little bit later. And it also is an organ of the digestive system. So belongs to two systems. Like the hypothalamus belongs to the nervous system and the endocrine system, the pancreas belongs to the digestive system and the endocrine system. Next, we have these glands here sitting on top of the kidneys. So the kidney, anything in reference to the kidney, we use the term renal. So sitting on top of the kidney, we have adrenal gland, or you could say suprarenal gland. Adrenal or suprarenal glands. And the glands have more hormones than just adrenaline, but for now, for this first test, I want you to know that adrenaline, one of the hormones that comes from the adrenal gland, is adrenaline. And what does adrenaline do? I think you know what it does. You release adrenaline whenever you are scared, whenever you're angry. It causes your heart rate to increase. It causes a sympathetic response. The sympathetic response is known as your fight or flight response. And this is like when you're scared, when you're angry, and you're like running for your life. And so it's going to increase your heart rate, increase your breathing rate, and it's going to put all the energy and the blood supply to your skeletal muscles, to your brain, your heart, and your skeletal muscles, because it could be very well a life or death situation. So this fight or flight, you're going to fight or you're going to run for your life, okay? Fight for your life or run for your life. And the other thing about adrenaline is it does make you dry, because it would inhibit your glands, like your salivary glands and your lacrimal glands and your digestive organs. Like, that's not going to digesting that steak you ate is not going to save your life right now. Like, you're fighting a bear, so you either need to run for your life or fight this bear if you're going to survive. So all of the what adrenaline does is it is going to bring about the fight or flight response, and place that blood and energy to your skeletal muscles, your brain, and your heart. So maybe you have a chance. And you're also going to be a little bit stronger than normal, because adrenaline does turn on all your skeletal muscles and allow them to, all the motor units to respond. This is another model that we have, a torso model, and there are those adrenal glands sitting on top of the kidneys. I have like a lot of torso models and models of the adrenal glands sitting on top of the kidneys.
I love it.
This is Tommy, and we have the right kidney and the left kidney, and this gland sitting on top of the kidney. You could say suprarenal, or you could say adrenal. Here we have the urinary apparatus. So we have the adrenal glands sitting on top of the kidney. What is the name of the hormone, or a hormone, the hormone I want you to know, that comes from the adrenal gland? Name that hormone and tell me what it does. Also, what is the name of this structure Z? That is something that we learned, not from this video, but from the very first video on terminology. Okay, another gland. The ovaries. The ovaries are part of the reproductive system, but they are also endocrine gland, and they do release two hormones. The two hormones from the ovaries are estrogen and progesterone. And let me tell you what they do. So estrogen, what I say about estrogen is that it turns the girl into a female. And then what I say about progesterone is it turns a female into a woman. So let me try to explain. So estrogen is going to, both of them are steroids, and they're both responsible for growth and development. Okay, so they're going to kind of bring about, like, when girls have growth spurts, they are released during puberty, and they will bring about growth and development. So they're responsible for, like, having growth spurts during puberty for girls. But so they're both steroids. They both cause growth and development. They both put sugar into the blood, like all steroids. All steroids bring about growth and development and put sugar in the blood. So that's what estrogen and progesterone do. But the difference between them is estrogen is really targeting those secondary female characteristics. So the breasts, and it's going to develop the endometrium, the lining of the uterus, the blood-rich lining of the uterus, and it's going to bring about these secondary sex characteristics. While progesterone is released a little bit, first it's estrogen, then progesterone. Progesterone is going to make those glands functional. So it's going to make it so that the mammary glands can actually produce milk, and progesterone is also going to make it so that the endometrium can actually supply nutrients to an embryo. So you have to have the progesterone for those structures to actually be functional. So this is why I say that estrogen turns the girl into a female, developing her secondary sex characteristics, while progesterone turns the female into a woman, making them actually functional. And it comes like a little bit later. Well, in your menstrual cycle, it's estrogen and then progesterone monthly. This is a model of the ovary. It's a crazy looking model, but it's showing you the developing follicle. So this is the ovary, and these structures inside the ovary, these are like the different stages of the developing follicle. And it's these structures that are releasing the estrogen and the progesterone. So as the follicle develops, it's releasing more and more and more estrogen, and as it kind of like changes, and it will later it will release progesterone. Okay, another gland that is part of the endocrine system, the testes, plural testes, both part of the reproductive system and the endocrine system. What is the name of the hormone that comes from the testes? There's just one hormone that comes from testes. What is the name of that hormone? Testosterone. It is a male steroid. Well, it's also in females, but it is responsible for masculinization. So it's responsible for the deep voice, the chest hair, the facial hair, and the secondary male characteristics, masculinization. It's a steroid, so it's going to give you energy, put sugar in the blood, and cause growth and development. And for males, it's going to be responsible for like when they have these growth spurts during puberty. So this one is going to be the pituitary gland. This is the thyroid. And behind the thyroid, this is the back of the thyroid, we have these little glands behind the thyroid, parathyroid gland. Above the kidney, adrenal gland, suprarenal gland. It's the testes, pancreas, ovaries. Because it's the uterus. This is the uterus, this is the fallopian tube, but this is the ovary here and here. So we have the pituitary gland, which is hanging right here from that hypothalamus. And in the neck, we have the thyroid. So this is thyroid, but this is behind the back of the thyroid. These four little glands here, the parathyroid glands. The adrenal gland sitting on top of the kidney. The pancreas. Ovaries. This is the ovary. And the testes. Okay, you're going to need to be able to, on the test, name, of course, identify and name all the endocrine glands, which there's 8 of them, and be able to tell me, like for the pituitary gland, what is the hormone that I wanted you to know comes from the pituitary gland. And from, sorry, kind of messed that one up. I already told you what it was. So each gland has an example of like a hormone that comes from it, or just one hormone that comes from it, or it has the two hormones that come from it. So I want you to tell me what are the hormones that come from those glands, and what is the action of the hormone. That is going to be on the test, okay, on this first test. So it's just 3 slides that are for review here. Yeah, review those 3 to the point that you can do it, answer the questions without looking, okay? So it's just for practice.